I decided to launch the Crossroads project in northern Benin because if you open up an atlas and look at the map, you will see that this part of northern Benin lies on the Niger River. It's one of the major rivers of Africa. We know quite a lot about the archaeology of some parts of it, but of northern Benin we know nothing at all. I had previously worked in Niger, just across the river from where we're currently excavating and carrying out research. And so when it came to formulating a research proposal, I was able to say that I had a knowledge of this particular piece of West Africa and that now I wanted to look just a bit beyond and try and expand what we knew. So we had some elements of information. One key aspect was that historically it's said that there were all these empires active in this part of northern Benin. You are at the crossroads of various political entities. And this is what the historical sources tell us, but archaeologically nothing had been done. So the point of choosing that region to start the Crossroads project was, first of all, to document the archaeology for the first time. Secondly, to work together with people who could talk to modern informants and to get them to tell us about how they thought the landscape had been affected by the past polities of the area, how it is that they learn to make things, what it means to them, pots, ironworking, dyeing, so what the technical practices tell us about people's identity. Well, pieces of fired pottery, such as these, occur on practically every archaeological site that you might find. Pottery's been made for 10,000 years or more, and it will survive as long as that. And as you can see, it comes in very different shapes and colors. There's a lot of variation, and because it's so available and because it's so diverse, we tend to rely on it quite heavily as archaeologists to get a sense of past ways of life and to get an idea of the people who made it. So you can get a sense of the shape of the pot, how large it was, how thin-walled. From there you get function. Was it a serving bowl? Was it a water bowl? Was it a cooking pot? You can say things about decoration. This was decorated using a roulette, which is a small bit of folded fiber, and the potter will have chosen this particular decoration for reasons linked to personal choice, fashion, and other factors. So the implication is it tells us a bit about that person's identity. Our findings as archaeologists are relevant today in a range of ways. Although the materials we're excavating are in many cases over 1,000 years old, they can still give us lessons which are significant for people today. For instance, the region we're looking at in northern Benin along the Niger River, today is a focus for population activity, for settlement and for farming and for the growth of cotton and onions because of the availability of water. People come and pasture and water their animals there, and the assumption is that this has always been a focus for settlement. Now, one thing you wonder is obviously environmental change. At some points the river would have flooded settlements, at other points there would have been a drought, and people might have been even more attracted to the shores of the river. So what we see at the sites in northern Benin, such as Benin Lafia, is it seems to be a very distinct pattern of settlement at a certain distance from the river. And what that's probably telling us is the way in which the environment conditioned past settlement choices, where people were able to live, what kind of food they had access to. They relied a lot on fishing, for instance. And as we learn more about how people adjust to the changing environment, that also makes us a tiny bit more sensitive to such questions in the present. And of course, environmental change is extremely relevant throughout the world today, and all the more so in marginal areas like the Sahel in West Africa, which is where we work. In other ways, it also tells us a tiny bit more about areas which today are geopolitically not that significant and seen as quite marginal. What we're getting from the archaeological record is an indication of really flourishing settlement, maybe long-distance trade links, so a very wide-ranging world outlook, which is partly hinted at through the historical sources, but it's always very difficult to sort these out. Archaeology gives you the actual basics of what people ate and did and discarded, because the archaeology is the rubbish of people of the past, and that gives you a very clear sense of how people lived. And so what we get from our work currently in northern Benin is an indication this was a very important, densely settled area, really thriving, quite potentially a major player in the regional scene. And so it kind of throws a spanner in the works of depiction of these areas as backwaters and dangerous and kind of unpleasant. It makes you think a tiny bit differently about the past, and in that sense it makes you think differently about the present. It makes you realize that the situation now of global politics is not necessarily the way things were in the past, and that's a very salutary lesson, I think, for everybody to remember.